Hi, I'm Dr. David Kashmer. Welcome to our latest webinar masterclass. This one's for MCAT Smackdown also, and it's why do even smart applicants fail in their first admission cycle? There are at least and mainly 5 reasons that applications fail, and today we're going to talk all about them. There's even one that you can't diagnose from the inside. Let's get to it. Well, here's the number that nobody says out loud. 57% of all MD applicants, fewer than half of those do not matriculate. So all the MD applicants, 57% don't matriculate. About most years, about 55,000 apply to medical school. These are total applicants to MD granting schools. This is the 2025 entering class. That's from the AAMC. And of this number, about 23,000 or so matriculated. The rest will mostly never learn why they were rejected. And that's what's so hard about this. Now, you probably know from watching other videos on this channel that I'm the chair of admissions for a U.S. medical school. I'm the chair or chief of surgery, and I'm the associate dean of innovation and simulation. My role as admissions committee chair, I can say confidently that we see lots of qualified applicants. And one of the most challenging things for applicants to get rejected is they really don't know why. They often don't have that feedback loop to understand what to do differently next time. Most rejected applicants assume it was their numbers. In fact, most of them are wrong. Here's what rejected applicants typically say versus what actually went wrong. What they say is, well, my MCAT was too low. Now, MCAT maximization is important. That's a lot of what MCAT Smackdown does. But we realized at MCAT Smackdown in the team meetings that it's about contextualizing your MCAT and positioning you with your MCAT score to do the best you can. There are lots of pain points along the pathway of medical school admissions, and a lot of them center around the MCAT and are MCAT related, but there are many others that are just as important. And so that's why MCAT Smackdown has me do these talks, and why MCAT Smackdown has built a suite of tools for students to have the best chance they can to get in with the MCAT that they obtain after all their hard work. So what students typically say is, well, my MCAT was too low, or my GPA, it wasn't very competitive, or hey, I just wasn't good enough. Every answer is often about numbers. But what actually went wrong falls into 5 domains typically. One is academic metrics. Sure. MCAT, GPA, those are influencers. And if you look at another video on here, you'll learn about the Moneyball calculator. You may remember the story about the Oakland A's and Moneyball, but what it's really about is maximizing the probability you get in to at least one school with your numbers. And the Moneyball optimizer or the Moneyball calculator from MCAT Smackdown does that. It takes your academic metrics, which are key, and you need to maximize them to help open more doors. But what it shows you is the context of where they fall, what some additional points on your MCAT may do or may not do to influence your chances, for example, at a school. There are other important domains too, and one of them is submission timing. Another is school list construction. And again, that optimizer calculator really helps, and it helps you to understand where to rank schools and what the probability is of at least one admission with the schools you've chosen and how you've ranked them. How you construct your school list can increase the probability that you get into a medical school, 5 times or more. That's really important. This one's for you if you're going through the application process a second or even a third time. That's what this whole talk is about. It's about you guys today, not just the people in the first time through. It's also important for them, but for people who are going through, again, school list construction is key. Narrative and essays, also key. We're going to talk about where those fit, and your experience portfolio. Now notice we talked a lot about these 5 actual domains, but 4 of the 5 have nothing to do with your MCAT. They're sort of indirectly related to your MCAT because that helps position you for how you construct your school list and some other factors, but really, other than academic metrics, they're not necessarily directly related to your MCAT score. All right, let's talk about domains 1 and 2, metrics and timing. Domain 1, numbers are a filter. They're not a ranking. If you're beneath a school's threshold, you're often invisible. Now above it, you're in the pool, and your MCAT stops doing much work. Now a 3-point retake moves you maybe from the middle of the pool to slightly less middle, and our calculator shows that behind the MCAT Smackdown login in the cohort. They get access to that, and it'll show you with a slider how much your MCAT changes the probability of admission at a particular school, the estimate. If you do retake, you typically need 4 points or more to have it be sort of meaningful, to have it meaningfully impact your score. Now, that doesn't mean don't retake it, don't take your shot, don't try to open doors. We're not saying that. But it's saying that a point, either way, typically will not close many doors or drastically shift probability. And the probability estimator helps you calculate that. So you can relax a little bit about maybe 1 point plus or minus. A 4-point swing tends to make more of a significant big deal. Sometimes, though, it really is the numbers. Like if your MCAT is beneath 500, if your science GPA is beneath 3.0, if you have a flat or declining trend in your scores. No essay coaching really fixes that, but fortunately, it describes a minority of rejected applicants. And most who assume that the numbers got them, most are wrong. Domain 2 is timing, and that means rolling admissions is not a metaphor. Seats fill as applications arrive. So a 510 submitted in June competes against an empty class. A 515 submitted in September competes for what is left. Same school, same rubric, very different odds. A late primary, like submitting in August, means things aren't really transmitted until September. Slow secondary, targeting about 7 days, and that's really hard with the number of essays and secondary essays. We have another whole talk about that coming out on the channel and what we can do about it, but about 7 days is a good target for the secondary. Slow secondary is a problem. 3 weeks is a signal. It's not really a good one. Next is missing letter. One late letter writer freezes your profile everywhere simultaneously. And one of the other upcoming tools for MCAT Smackdown is something to assist with follow-up for the missing letter. That's coming soon. We do have another talk about ways to overcome the slow secondary. But the bottom line is domain 2 is timing. And that really impacts people and unfortunately helps push them into having to do the whole process again. Domain 3 is the school list. And if I had to pick one, I would say this is the most expensive mistake in the process. Applying to 12 schools that were really never going to admit you anyway, or were lottery ticket, or reach schools from the calculator, it's not a strategy. It's a coin flip, and it's not a good coin flip. It's not even as fair as a coin flip. Those are typically 50-50. And you paid $4,000 to lose that coin flip. Too few schools, under 15 is typically not a strategy. Reach heavy, below a school's 10th percentile on the MCAT, school's more of a lottery ticket for you. Skipping in-state publics, state residency is the single largest lever available. It's free. And then excluding DO on prestige grounds. A DO acceptance beats a 4th cycle for sure, probably even beats a 3rd cycle every time. And that calculator, the Moneyball calculator and the school list optimizer show you how minimal the differences are in many ways between the typical admitted student to a DO school versus an MT school. And excluding a DO school on prestige grounds only, well, I'll tell you, it really beats a 4th cycle if you have a DO acceptance every time. Domain 4 is the narrative. Admissions committees read thousands of personal statements, and these are real sentences from real applications. I've always been passionate about helping people. Ever since I was young, I've been fascinated by the human body. I mean, none of those sentences are lies. They're just interchangeable with every other essay we see typically. And an interchangeable applicant is often an invisible one. Now, here's probably the key thing on the slide. Silence on a red flag, like an institutional action, a withdrawn semester, a grade collapse, that reads to us as evasion. We know you have it. The portal we go through makes it very clear what your situation is. If you don't handle the red flag, it's going to hurt you. It's in fact fatal if you ignore a red flag typically. A well-handled red flag can help you. Be honest with the committee. They're surprisingly understanding. Say things in a plain way. You don't need to dwell on it, but you do need to address your red flags. Very important. The test your essay must typically pass, and I should say this again. Yes, I'm the chair of an admissions committee. I am not sharing anything specifically about our school's admission process, that school where I'm the chair, or anything in particular that is different in our school from any school. This is typical high-level advice for schools across the country. Again, no specifics on our school's admission process. Pretty much everywhere, if you ignore a red flag or you don't say anything, that's a problem, and it's very easily sussed out on your application. Here's a test typically the essays must pass. If a stranger could read it and name the moment you decided on medicine, not the theme, but the moment, a room, a person, a thing that was said, specificity in that, experientially, it seems to help. It is how you stop being just a file to the admissions committee. This is a personal thing for me. I don't know that everybody works this way, but I do think this is high-level advice. We see it repeated in books on how to do this. So it's nothing specific to the school I work at, or me really. But typically, a test your essay must pass is a stranger needs to be able to read it and know why you decided on medicine. Not a theme about it, but the moment, something specific. Specificity is not a style preference. Again, it's often how you stop being a file. Domain 5 is the experience portfolio. Depth beats breadth. One commitment you held for 2 years says a lot more than 8 that you held for 2 months. 14 short activities kind of reads like box checking typically, not well-rounded. And this is, again, high-level advice, not advice from our admissions committee and how our team typically looks at it. None of these are specific to our school, but typically breadth is beaten by depth of experience. Clinic hours. This is typically a non-negotiable at most schools. Under 250 hours can be a real problem at some schools, and no other part of the application can really offset that. Clinical hours that are significant are really important to show groups often that you know sort of what you're getting into. So this tends to be focused on by many schools. And non-clinical service. This is an often skipped requirement, but it's really not optional. Committees tend to notice when it's absent, when you don't have signs of clinical hours or non-clinical service. So again, try not to skip this, make sure it's meaningful, and make sure it represents you and the work you've done. Experience portfolio is very important. Here's another problem. You really can't diagnose yourself. If you fall into a second round and you try to figure out, man, what did I do wrong? It's really hard for you to sort out what the barriers were to you moving ahead and getting an acceptance to at least one school on your list. Why self-diagnosis fails? Well, the school doesn't really feed back, and it's because it gets thousands of applications for sometimes, 100 seats plus or minus for some schools. The school really can't meaningfully, or at least they don't yet, have a clear way and a useful way to get you specific feedback about why it didn't work for you with them. It's very hard. Schools often don't tell you why. You also have no comparison set. You may have a few friends, you may have read things on Reddit of people with higher stats, which is part of why you say it's your numbers, but you have no real comparison set across the breadth and scope of applicants. So that makes it hard to self-diagnose. And next, you're reading your own file from the inside. You're in it. So it turns out the failures that hurt you most on your application are often the ones you're blind to, the ones you can't see. It's very challenging to diagnose yourself for these reasons and others. Now, the signal that almost nobody reads is how many interviews you got. If you had 0 interviews, you probably never cleared the paper screen. Paper screen meaning metric screen. Problem is in the written file somewhere, and interview coaching is probably not going to help you. Next, 4 interviews with no acceptance. Your file is clearly viable. You got 4 interviews, but something else happened. Usually performance, or you got in late on a rolling cycle. Same rejection letter says, we're sorry to inform you, but completely different fixes. In fact, often opposite fixes for 0 interviews versus multiple interviews, but no acceptance. So the cost of guessing wrong is high, and the reapplicant who gets in is a certain kind. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the cost of a wrong guess. It's at least $5,000 to $10,000 if you go through a reapplication file or system or round and you don't get it again. Primary and secondary fees, MCAT, Kashmer, preview, and interview. Travel, typically for a 25 school list, plus a year of your life, plus eventually 1 year delayed attending a physician level pay. It's probably much more than $5,000 to $10,000. This is the percentage of reapplicants in the 2025 pool, 23.5%. It's roughly 13,000 people. If you're a reapplicant, you're not that unusual. A quarter of the people are reapplicants. So this one is for you. The reapplicant who gets in is almost never the one with the higher MCAT, meaning, like we said, it's important to attempt to do your best on the MCAT. A 4-point swing or so should be the goal, but it doesn't mean if you don't quite achieve your 4-point swing that it's the end of the world. Going up is a good trend, and it can still be very useful. It's the reapplicant who is successful is the one who knew exactly what went wrong the first time. And like we said, it's very hard to diagnose. The difference is not talent, it's diagnosis. Committees can see you applied before, and what they look for is often what changed, what's different now. Well, if you fix the wrong thing, which you can't be blamed for because you don't get signal feedback from the school that you applied to, you're trying to self-diagnose, which we learned is not very effective. And if you did fix the wrong thing, like we said, it fails again. So MCAT Smackdown team thinks a lot about you and this and the pain points of application and all of the stress and focus around the MCAT, which is part of why it creates useful tools for its group and you so that you can do differently and better the next time around. Let's talk briefly about the one for the reapplicants. Here is the reapplicant tool, and these are the admission tools that are available to the cohort for MCAT Smackdown. This is the medical school probability estimator. It estimates for allopathic and osteopathic schools, given your MCAT and GPA, your probability at each school based on type. It'll optimize your school list based on expected value for target versus reach versus long shot versus all the different kinds of schools and what they mean. And of course, this is on the user profile. You get your dashboard with your score trends, your blueprint heat maps, why you miss questions under why I miss, the diagram of why you're missing. It'll show your trend over time. This person's only taken 1 diagnostic. It shows your missed question log with why and what you need to go back to. It's got your AI coach that you can tap into to improve things. And under admission tools, it has all of these useful, novel admission tools to help with the pain points of what to do with your MCAT and what it means. So again, the med school probability estimator, the secondary workbench. This one helps with cycle time to create essays based on your experiences, and it does not replace you writing your essay, but it will draft an essay for you to adjust so you get a sense of how things are. Again, it doesn't do your work for you. Remember, you attest that the work you're turning in is yours, but it'll give you an idea and a template to decrease your cycle time to write essays. So that's the secondary workbench. We have another talk coming up about that. But here is the reapplicant postmortem. If you're a reapplicant, this is the one for you. Or if your first time going through the application process is now, it's useful to use this as a pre-mortem so you can see what can go off the rails and what you need to prevent. So this is a series of questions that asks you things like your MCAT score range, your GPA, your science GPA, your grade trend over time, When was your primary done? This takes you through 22 questions. And at the end, it gives you what you need to adjust. Most likely, all of these things, nothing can promise admission to medical school very well. But what this can do is sort out for you and for your background what you probably want to maximize and change. And again, that's the reapplicant post-mortem. It helps prevent another cycle where we have that issue where we have to go through things again. And again, this is a quarter of our colleagues out there who are going through the application process for the second time. Roughly 13,000 people. That tool is built for you to help your pain point of, oh, what do I do differently this time? So because the committees do see again that you applied before and they look for what's changed and it's hard to self-diagnose, the postmortem can really help steer you in the right direction. So stop guessing, start here. Take your free readiness assessment for the MCAT for this round, whether it's your first or your fourth. Now in surgery, we don't usually operate only because someone is in pain. Pain matters, but we typically try to find the cause unless there's no time and we just have to do what we have to do. In general, the wrong operation can be worse than no procedure at all. So before you fix anything, find out what's actually broken. And a lot of that is the approach of MCAT Guessing costs a year. The MCAT assessment costs about 20 minutes. It's free to you. It's at MCATSmackdown.com. 20 minutes is enough to tell you something you didn't know. And just a 6-minute quiz would just confirm what you thought. But a 20-minute brief diagnostic tells you your weakest section, how ready to go you are for the MCAT this time. And that honest score will tell you where you actually stand, not where you assume you stand for this round. It's free. There's no card, no trial, no catch. Once you've gotten your sense of what's weakest, when you choose to sign up for the cohort, you get access to all of the admissions tools. Again, none of these are built with anything other than the eye of an admissions committee chair, which is really useful for this, and also publicly available data. Because we know many of the things that across the country admissions groups use to kind of help decide if you get admitted, we're able to build those tools that students find useful to avoid their pain in the process. In talking with the MCAT Smackdown students, we got very specific about what are the barriers and tools in the admission cycle. And this one is for you if you're a reapplicant this round and you need a tool for the postmortem because it's very hard to self-diagnose. So start your journey to get your tools and to improve your MCAT score and to maximize your probability of getting admitted to one school. Do that at MCATSmackdown.com. You can go watch a free webinar about score leaks, and you go ahead and take your free MCAT readiness assessment. I look forward to speaking with you soon and helping you do your best on the MCAT with your best self showing up and also maximizing the probability with your MCAT in numbers that you get accepted to at least one school, if not more, in this coming round. Talk soon.